Right now, across this country, there are a huge number of sensible, hard-working, everyday Australians who are very worried about where our country is right now. They feel that something's not right. They think that there's a serious lack of leadership and direction. We have Liberal and National Party voters saying that their parties have abandoned the core Liberal values of small government, freedom of expression, the right to privacy, the right to work, the right to choose, and a lack of support for small business and jobs. Then we've got the Labor voters who are saying that their party has been a club, an elitist club for the inner city people who've lost touch with battlers and everyday Australians, and particularly those blue-collar workers who are out there in the resource sectors. Many Australians are looking for a third force, for a sensible party with sensible policies but providing real leadership. They know, though, that the Greens are too far left. They're the extreme left, and perhaps One Nation is not their cup of tea either. 6 years ago, I stood before the people of Queensland. I said my political career was over, and I meant it. I've now got a successful small business. I have a great life. But in the past year or so, I've been approached on many occasions. Indeed, I've had hundreds of phone calls, text messages, emails from people. I've been stopped in Queen Street so many times, you know, I should set up shop down there. And people are saying to me, please, 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 we need people like you back in politics. Because they want someone there to stand up for them, someone to fight for them, someone to be their champion. But it's not just about me, ladies and gentlemen. If we're to do this properly, we need a party to look after the forgotten Australians. Now, on the subject of the party, it was a gut-wrenching decision to leave the Liberal National Party. It's the party that I've been involved in since the age of 12. Since the age of 12, I've handed out how-to-vote cards, I've done letterbox drops, I've stood at polling booths, I've folded those mail drops, I've worked in campaigns, and I've served the party as an elected official. Both my parents served as federal ministers. My dad with Malcolm Fraser in the 1970s into the early 80s, and my mum Jocelyn with John Howard as the most senior elected female politician in the nation. But the problem's this: the Liberal Party today, and more specifically the politicians of the Liberal Party and the LNP, do not stand up for, do not represent the values of the party that actually put them into office, and indeed those are the values of Australia that they're not representing. And what I say to you is that in this time of crisis, I will not stand by any longer and see this crisis go on with this huge debt, massive budget deficits, and an acceptance of the erosion of our civil liberties and our freedoms that we all took for granted. Indeed, people storming ashore at Anzac Cove on the 25th of April 1915 would be horrified to see where we've got to. I've spent the past couple of weeks speaking to many, many people. I've received hundreds of emails and text messages, and I've got to say that the enthusiasm and support of people has been really humbling. And as I move forward, not full of bravado, and perhaps you can tell, not self-assurance, but with a degree of nervousness. I've not done this for 6.5 years, and I really didn't intend to do it again. But it's through the encouragement of others. It's people are saying to me, office bearers in the LNP this morning are texting me, are ringing me and saying, you have to do this, we're behind you. And they're serving in the LNP executive today here in Queensland. But more importantly, this is the person who really made the decision, or helped me make that decision, because she's 100% beside me today. So Lisa has given this the nod, and so have the kids, even though they know what the personal cost has been in the past and no doubt will be again in the future. Now, in terms of my decision, one thing I wanted to make sure of was that the party I was joining reflected my core values. the values of those everyday Australians, of every colour and creed, and those values that hard work should be rewarded. The tax and red tape should not burden our achievers and job creators. The government should remain small and strive to lift people up and not lock them down, as a prominent American politician said recently. And they believe that in this time of crisis, we should seek to bring people together to be their best and treat them as grown-up adults, to voluntarily do the right thing, not add to suffering with onerous, draconian rules enforced by fines and policing, tearing people away from their loved ones, keeping them apart from loved ones on their deathbed at life's most important moments, and treating the community like helpless, powerless children. I simply can't sit by and watch Australia be so poorly led, and this crisis so poorly managed by our major political parties. I love Australia. I love Queensland. I want to represent Queensland in the Senate and hold the major parties, politicians' feet to the fire in Canberra, because right now, you know what, ladies and gentlemen, they are seriously letting us all down. I've therefore made the decision to accept the offer from the Liberal Democrats to lead their Senate ticket for Queensland at the next federal election, because the Liberal Democrats are that sensible, balanced party who will provide real leadership to the nation. I'm making the change to the Liberal Democrats, and I'm calling now on all Australians who believe in traditional Liberal values to also make that change. This is not a time to make a back seat. This is not a time to sit on the sidelines if you're worried about Australia. This is a time to stand up and be counted, because we have to make this change together. Scott Morrison has sadly let Australia down. Anthony Albanese represents outdated socialism that will saddle our kids with even more debt. You know, that's hard to even say these days after what the federal government has done, and who will also destroy our culture with woke nonsense and red tape. We need to return to real leadership and strong, sensible, true Liberal government. The Liberal Democrats Party is energised. The national leadership are in the process of building a strong team right around the nation with a clear aim to win Senate seats and perhaps even seats in the House of Representatives. So I say to all Australians who are fed up with the major parties, there is now a sensible third option that you can vote for. Join with us as we build a new mainstream political movement in Australia that fights for the battlers, fights for small business, stands up for freedom and liberty, and defends traditional Aussie values, the Liberal Democrats. To conclude, when Robert Menzies founded the Liberal Party, he said the time was right for a new political force in Australia, one which fought for the freedom of the individual and produced enlightened Liberal policies. And I say the time is right again for such a force.